mentor at DCU when I was getting my doctoral degree, and we're really close friends. So we likely will fight during this, but it's all good. All right. So Micah, let me bring you in here and just say whatever you want to get us kicked off, and then I'll start some slide stuff.
I guess what I would say is that I do not take responsibility for who you are. I was not there in person. That was some other part of me, but you are and have always been a wonderful person. And I just enjoy the work that we do together. It's the sense of flow, the sense of humor, the sense of realness, the transparency is what makes this thing work. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation as well. And hello, everybody that's there. Good to see you all. Good to hear you later.
Awesome. So Micah has been with us since day one. So we've been doing this together for 18 years. This whole idea of growth through adversity. So new context, new venue, same stuff, right? So we got this, and we're going to help you out. So first thing I want to share with you is I'm not okay, and that's okay. Meaning that this is one of the toughest times in our country, in our world's experience. Anyone who tells you they're good when they say, how you doing? They're lying, right? We've got people all over the map right now, ups and downs, and this is going on for a long time. It's okay when you're not okay. This isn't about perfection. This is about getting through and growing on the other end. So if you're feeling overwhelmed at times and anxious, that means you are what is called a human being. So we're going to try to walk with you through this in a series of growth conversations. We'll have different people, but I just want to throw it out there that it's okay if you're not feeling okay. By the end of this call, I guarantee you, the majority of you, if not all of you, will feel better, and you'll have some practical skills to use. So for those of you that live in the Northeast, which by the way, Micah lives in Jersey now. He was in Richmond, Virginia. Yes. This is the George Washington Bridge, which connects New York to New Jersey. It is the most traveled bridge in the world, and I love it because it's just a tribute to connection. You'll see my artwork here where it says, I am stronger today because. We want you to have that mindset of stronger when you leave than when you came in. So getting through this crisis, getting through this day, as long as you think of something that you learned or help you be stronger, that's progress. Many of you have seen crisis and things around this, the Chinese symbol for crisis. The main thing is that it is an opportunity. And for our Greek friends that are on the phone, crisis comes from the Greek word krisis, right? Which you could see it comes right there, which means a turning point or recovery. It can go either way. What I think is different about this is this crisis is a different type of crisis. It's a consistent one, and one that we are facing on a daily basis. And we're in the middle. I'm not a medical doctor, but a lot of doctors in New York believe over this weekend, we're probably going to see the apex, the peak of a lot of this crisis as far as people coming in with COVID-19. So that's both good and bad as far as that pressure, but there's always opportunity in all crisis, and it may not feel like that in the moment, but it's really important. So let me just say real quickly that whatever you're feeling is an accurate feeling. And there's all different responses to crisis, and that's all right. Let me bring in Micah here, and just anything you want to say, Micah, or respond to before I move on?
Well, that first slide where it said it's okay. And the thing is that to worry, to have anxiety, to have any of these emotions that are on the screen now, fear, hopelessness, that's just normal. That's what it is to be human. I think too often we think that when we have these kind of emotions, these kind of feelings, that's abnormal. That's what's normal, to have them. And it's not the having that's the issue, it's what do you do with them that we really want to talk about. That's where the growth comes in. No one grows without crisis. No one, and that unfortunately, that's over human history. We realize that you're unconscious of things until you go through something, then you become conscious, and then you can make a difference. So that growth has to come through and from going through adversity.
Thank you. And Micah, really briefly, could you, I feel like I'm a CNBC reporter right now, just really, with only 30 seconds. Can you just tell us your connection to crisis and loss, and I'll do the same. I realize that not everyone may be familiar with us.
Sure. For me, I guess the major piece was growing up in Detroit, Michigan, in the early 60s. I was born before that, unfortunately. And one of the crises was the riots in Detroit. We had a riot in 1967 and another riot in 68. During those riots, my father, who had served in the military, didn't know it then because I was only 10 years old, but his post-traumatic stress disorder took over, and he went from being a great man, a great dad, to being a very bad man, a very bad dad. That led to him leaving us, me growing up as the oldest of 7 children, helping my family, learning to become a warrior because of gangs, violence around us, etc. Wound up fortunate enough to get out, go to college. And while at college, my first year, my brother was convicted of murder. And so the closest person to me, only 17 months younger than I am, wound up going into jail. And I remember the first time watching my mom visit. We didn't know that wasn't a part of our worldview. And for her to have to deal with that, and things just spiraled. I've been blessed and fortunate, but there's just been a lot of things. A sister dying of singing a concert and dying in 2000. My brother last year of prostate cancer. We only knew it for a week. So it goes on. And each one of those, though, really were opportunities to figure out, what am I going to do? What am I going to be? Am I going to give in to this kind of pain?
Thank you. And the reason I think that's important is for you to realize what Micah has been through that has brought him here and to us. So, Micah is just a platform of strength and has great insights that are really helpful. For me, Hold the Door was founded because our dad, Ron Fazio, was in the towers, and he was last seen holding the door to help people. So that was my first introduction to crisis. Before that, I grew up in Bergen County, New Jersey, in a bubble world where the worst thing that happened was Rudy's Pizza was closed at 11 p.m. So didn't have much before that. All right. So when crisis happens, you could either grow, you could become depressed, anxious, but there are things that you can do that can help you through. And Hold the Door has certain principles. We are not, I would say, the most warm, fuzzy, friendly group of people that deal with crisis and loss and trauma. Our whole stance is you can grow through adversity, and you need to take some ownership of that. And that may sound like a lot of pressure. It's okay to have bad days, but everything we do at Hold the Door leads to growth. So we talk about our principles. Adversity is really your teacher. And all feelings come and go, and no matter what you think, they actually will pass, just like this crisis will pass. But we know is the more intentional you are about trying to grow and work on yourself, the more your mind will help you find opportunities to decrease the anxiety and the tough times, and open up more opportunities towards growth. So I'll let you take a look at this right here for all of you who are trying to help others out. So a lot of us and people that are trying to help out and stuff, 70%, 77% of Americans in typical times are faced with burnout, and usually multiple cases. So just realize that we're in a perfect storm of anxiety, and we're very susceptible and vulnerable to that because we have lack of clarity, we have lack of certainty, and we don't have a lot of control over things. And that's why so many people are feeling that sense of burnout. So want to teach you one skill, one thing for you to keep in mind. And this first skill is about realizing, whether you know it or not, we all have a reporter that is writing stories inside of us. All day long, we have a narrative and stories going on. The better you can get at being aware that's happening and not let those stories get printed or get hooked by you, the more freedom you will have in your psychological health. So for example, when I'm talking to you right now, I'm thinking, oh gosh, am I helping people out? Is Micah talking enough? And there's just a reporter writing these stories. And what I have to say is, I name my reporter. My reporter's name is Skip. And I say, Skip, thanks for the information. I'll get back to you. Just taking a moment to pause and realize that all that story and everything that's getting written isn't necessarily fact. And you can always go back to that. So that's your first strength skill, is realizing we all have reporters inside of us, but we're the editors, and we could say, we're not printing that story. And then we could say, all right, what I'm going to focus on next is, I think this would be a good time to bring Micah in, right? You control that. So Micah, let me ask you, you had a few thoughts. I know that you were thinking about Viktor Frankl's work and some other work. Why don't you tell us a little about what you were thinking of?
One, you look at the reporter, that reporter, there's a time to use the reporter. And what Viktor Frankl said was that we've got a stimulus and then we have a response. There's something that happens, COVID-19 happens, and there's gonna be a response to it. Well, it's that intermediate part between the stimulus and the response where we make a difference, where we grow. We can say, okay, I'm gonna stop, pause for a minute here. I'm going to breathe. I'm a person who really believes in mindfulness, and it's a time to just really count to 10. It's a time to really just sit down, take a break, and then respond. And that's where that reporter can come in. It's recording as that stimulus happens. Give it that time to report to you. Give it that moment to actually make a difference in your world. That's what's happening. People we get so anxious or so upset, so discouraged by the events that have happened, we then automatically begin to do something. That's not the way to go. The way to go is to take that moment, take that pause, take that time out, and let the reporter speak to you. That's it. The other piece, I like to, a number of psychologists have said it, but it's to really be compassionate to yourself during these times. I think we're our worst critics. We beat ourselves up so often when we get worried, when we are overwhelmed, and that only exacerbates the problem, makes things worse, rather than saying, hey, I'm a great person, I may have made this choice, I may be feeling this way, but I'm going to care for myself, and to really do these kinds of things, like attend this conference, attend this conversation. That's being good to yourself. I think that's critical to it as well.
Thank you, sir. And one of my other mentors in the sports psych field, Dr. Al Pettipa, always would talk to me about distracting the distractors. Michelle Wiley now, you know what I'm talking about, right? So he would say, distract the distractors. And we have so many things that are eating away, and it's like an incubation for insecurity. So for me, right, I look down, I see my daughter Reese right now. I don't know what she's baking, she's doing something, but I look down, and that mental break where I just have a laugh, she's like, oh, Daddy, I don't know what you're doing, man. She's making a mess, right? But finding ways to stop the direction your mind's going in if it's not helpful. And what Hold the Door has been really focusing on right now with the coronavirus crisis is flattening the anxiety curve with a growth curve. So intentional growth combats anxiety. And in our work, we looked at what buffers the negative impact, which we'll get to in a moment here, of trauma, crisis, and loss. But we know is that we do have choices that we can make that can decrease the anxiety. This is not just a feel-good thing. So Hold the Door is also advising and working with hospitals, in Ohio, in New York City, where they're having really tough times because people are getting repurposed. So you might have a doctor that's a knee surgeon, and next thing you know, they're working with a COVID-19 patient, and it's really stressful, completely outside their zone. If we decrease our anxiety and increase our growth, it also decreases the chance of us impacting our immune systems negatively. So we know that 70 to 80% of sickness and disease can be traced back to some type of stress when our immune system was compromised. So that's something, if you feel like you want to give back, decrease your anxiety and other people's anxieties. And here's what we suggest you do. We want this to be as simple as possible. We use the framework of learn, laugh, and love. Why? Because it's easy to remember, and all of us have control over it. It's something all of us can do. And we're not even saying do all three, but we're saying do one of these every day. So Kelly and I, we when we're talking with Reese and she's doing something funny, we'll video it and that will be our laugh. Or if we make the mistake of asking her to teach something, that takes about 15 minutes just in her responding to that. So she loves to teach our daughter. But that element of taking a break from the anxiety and from all the stuff that's going on in the media is so critical to our minds and our bodies, giving ourselves a break and resetting. So whatever that is for you, making a list of things that you enjoy or laughing. The whole idea is if you create new pathways for your mind, it will follow you. Doc, anything you want to add to that or talk about related to that?
Nope.
That's how I know when I listened when he was talking in class. I did good. I mentioned some of the stuff we're doing at hospitals. I thought it might be helpful for us to show what we are talking to them about. So for those of you that might be in healthcare or not, or those of you who are working, you can replace this in hospital with anything, like when I need to be on my game, watching your kids, whatever job you have. These are the things that you want to be doing. Realizing those moments, there's going to be fear, and it's going to have an impact on you, but you want to focus over the fear. And we have a lot from the sports psychology field around using keywords that are words that reconnect you to a time you were really confident, giving a presentation, talking to a loved one. You go back to that and you think about how confident you were and you associate a word with that. So for a lot of people, it's something like, I got this. And the trick is you really have to believe it. Another thing are self-statements, things you say to yourself that increase your confidence. By the way, when I was at Springfield College and I was learning about all of this in our athletic counseling program, I was like, whatever, this really doesn't work. I grew up as a very anxious child who was overweight and used to hide underneath tables because I was afraid my kindergarten teacher was going to yell at me next. I had a lot of anxiety, stomach pains, all of it, and I didn't think it could work. And it really has changed my life by putting a lot of these things into practice. So I think that setting some direction for yourself really, really helps. And then the building up others. We know healing through helping works. Christine Usher's on this call. She's got a great example of what she did for the William Usher Foundation and helping people that were getting treated with cancer, helping that experience be better by providing video equipment. Because back then, when you used to go through chemotherapy, the rooms were just very bland. You didn't have any equipment. So she really took on initiative doing that as a result of her healing. And then when you're home, recognizing your self-awareness, what am I stressed about? What are my triggers? What are my energizers? Active stress management is critical. Watching Netflix is good, but not good enough. You want to do things that also activate your mind and your body. So I'm not going to go into details on this because you could find on Hold the Door articles about this, videos on burnout, and things that we talk about more. And then things that you can do both at home or when you have to focus. You'll notice that we mention humor quite a bit because it's so important to have that reset. And let me pause here before we get into the others framework. Micah, anything that you want to talk about here?
I think part of it too is making sure we maintain the boundaries that while a lot of us are working from home or we're stuck into our homes, to really have routine, even though you're at home, you know, I get up at 5 in the morning and get my 3-mile walk in, do my workout, and then get dressed for work. Work until 5 o'clock typically. And then at 5 o'clock, you know, it's like go cook dinner for my wife. But to really put in place things that help us to recognize this is different, but here's how I'm going to manage it. Here's how I'm going to be active in really resolving these things. I think too often we get overwhelmed by it as well. Those of us like yourself who suffer with anxiety, we have to figure out ways to manage that anxiety.
Yeah, thank you. And so when we first started Hold the Door, we looked at the research on what not only buffers trauma and crisis and loss, but what helps you actually grow through the other end. So I know growth mindset with Carol Dweck's a huge thing, and that's great, and that's really helpful. 18 years ago, we already coined growth consultants. So it feels pretty cool. Like people are like, oh, you're doing growth mindset stuff. I'm like, nah, Dweck came after us. Right, Micah?
Right.
So our basic approach here is we found 8 resources that we have skills and key messages related to. So if you are interested in the academic side, we do have journal articles in the clinical psychology and a book on trauma on number one, how you can help others and do this. And Dr. Fazio, Dr. Kelly Fazio, and Dr. Andy High at Penn State, Kelly's at TCNJ. Shout out to TCNJ. They're going to be helping with Hold the Door public health stuff, so that's pretty cool. But they coordinate what is our helper initiative, and they're going to be doing a growth conversation coming up in a couple weeks here, talking about if you're someone who's helping others, how you do that. So we've got some information if you're a psychologist or a helper and how you would do that. And then also on the website, we have what's called our growth through adversity survey. So it's a self-awareness tool where you can learn what your skill sets are from a weakness to a relative strength to a strength. And then we have a growth guide that helps you. The key is just to be developing yourself each time, whether it's a strength you want to get stronger or a development area, and then you teach it to someone else. We're very big on stockpiling positive experiences. We can't stockpile N95 masks and ventilators. We can stockpile positive experiences. We all have the control to do that. And just as COVID-19 is one of the most contagious viruses, positive emotion is even more contagious, and we need to be intentional about doing that for one another.
Well said.
Thank you, sir. This is the framework we use when we are helping others, whether it's a coaching conversation, a growth consulting conversation. This is how we help others. So we use Connect, Care, and Challenge to drive these 8 resources. And then you'll realize there's self-connect, self-care, self-challenge. Everything starts with self. I don't care if you are in the military and you are leading in a crisis, you have to first be strong. And you have to know what you're good at and what you're bad at and where you need help. It always starts with self. Just a couple words on what we found from our research on 9/11. The bottom line is relationships, social support is really what matters. We found that emotional intelligence and resilience predict post-traumatic growth. So what does that mean? In this time, the best thing that you could be doing is connecting with people, providing support for others. You may say, but I'm not a psychologist. Doesn't matter. We actually think that people that are friends or colleagues can even be better at psychologists providing support because they know the person better and they have a connection. And it's really more about finding a way to be helpful, reaching out. It can be things that are simple as just being a good listener. So whatever, or something that you're really good at and teaching that to someone else, that goes a long way. Micah, let me throw it over to you. Anything you want to add here or say at this point?
Nope.
All right. So what we're going to do here is first, I'm going to let you know that next week, Dr. Brianna Patel, who is a close friend, as well as helped us with Hold the Door Growth Consultants from a child program and initiative. We're going to talk about children and anxiety and parents next week with Dr. Patel. And then as mentioned, Dr. Kelly Fazio, and I'm not sure if she's doing with Dr. Hyde, but he'll be involved at some point. We'll be doing stuff around helping skills and social support. So here we're gonna open it up. Micah, you spelled curve wrong on this here. You should have proofread my slides. That's yeah, that's spelled wrong.
You're gonna blame me? I can't spell, so I could take credit for that.
No, in crisis,
I have an editor.
Right, the crisis.
I use an editor.
The first thing you want to do is blame others. That's a core element of what we do. No, I created the slide. My bad. But those of you who know me will not be surprised. If you've been to Hold the Door Day, you've seen this plenty of times.
Some of us would not even recognize it was wrong. It's like,
right. All right, Micah. Let's stop recording here so we can have some free flow conversation. So Jeff's going to stop recording, and Mike and I are just going to have some conversation with you.